The Price is Right is nothing less than an American institution, one of daytime television's most successful game shows. For more than 3 decades, Bob Barker and his bevy of Barker's Beauties have delighted television audiences.
I'm happy with my beauties, and my beauties are happy with me, and we're going to keep it that way.
But appearances can be deceiving.
We all looked happy, yeah, but man, that camera went off and the claws came out.
In the next hour, we will take you behind the doors of TV's longest-running game show and reveal the games people really played.
People would sort of tiptoe around her, and she could wield the mighty sword.
We'll learn about the Barker beauty whose husband mysteriously disappeared.
I wanted to know, is this man that I loved dead, alive, or in prison?
We'll examine the scandalous allegations surrounding the show's real-life drama.
We're going to prove that these charges are false, and I'm going to sue her for malicious prosecution.
And we'll hear from the beauties who are no longer playing the game.
I feel like I got a divorce.
I literally lived out of my car.
This is a story of high stakes, power games, and winners and losers. This is the story of The Price is Right, the true Hollywood story.
There was a positive dream of being one of the world's
Her life's ambition was to be a star.
Could never recover from the public scandal.
The 1950s were the era for game shows. Post-war audiences were eager to leave their troubles behind, and TV game shows fed their fantasies of the good life, American style. In the early 1950s, 2 men were the undisputed kings of game shows, producers Mark Goodson and Bill Todman. Goodson-Todman's early hits, like What's My Line and To Tell the Truth, were all on primetime. But in 1956, the producers did something radical. They created a game show for daytime TV. On November 26th, The Price is Right debuted at 10:30 in the morning on NBC. Broadcast live from New York, the daily half-hour show was hosted by 46-year-old Bill Cullen.
Hello and welcome to The Price is Right.
Webmaster Mark Green runs a popular Price is Right website.
The contestants took alternating turns bidding on the one prize that was shown. The objective was to come closest to the price of the item without going over.
The producers added sex appeal by hiring models to show off the prizes. The formula proved a winner. After enjoying a 7-year run on NBC, The Price is Right moved to ABC. 2 years later, ABC revamped its lineup and canceled all game shows, including The Price is Right.
Bill Cullen saying having a real good weekend, and bye everybody.
But that wasn't the end of The Price is Right. In 1972, CBS lured away the daytime programming chief for NBC, Bud Grant. Grant approached Goodson and Todman about reviving their once successful franchise. The late Mark Goodson.
Bud Grant had come to CBS and said, let's do it again. I said, not the way it was done before. Let's give it a whole new, fresh look.
Goodson and Todman ordered a colorful new set. They also cast new on-camera personnel. For their host, Goodson and Todman chose the 47-year-old MC of Truth or Consequences, Bob Barker.
And he had that great capacity to ad-lib whenever he used the cue card, which we liked.
61-year-old Johnny Olson came on board as the announcer. Anitra Ford, a 30-year-old actress, was hired to show off the merchandise. Ford was joined by 26-year-old Janice Pennington. Pennington was a former Playboy playmate and appeared on the show Laugh-In.
Mark Goodson told me, well, maybe you'll have a job for a while. I don't know how long it's going to run.
CBS executives liked the retooled version and signed a production deal with Goodson and Todman. The new Price is Right premiered at 10:30 in the morning on September 4th, 1972.
It was definitely a hit right away. In the first few years, it aired in the early morning time slot.
Taped at the CBS studios in Los Angeles, the half-hour program featured several contests and a dramatic showcase showdown round. MC, Bob Barker.
When we bring something out and say, what do you bid? If you're watching at home, you think, well, gee, that's too high. Or, oh, no, you should bid higher than that. And when you become involved, then we got you.
As the host, Barker had the rugged looks and confidence of an all-American hero. Cheryl Paris was assistant to executive producer Frank Wayne.
Barker had a certain magic on stage. He truly did. He knew exactly how long to talk to which contestant, what to say, when to have them move.
But Barker was only part of the show's equation for success.
Beautiful women have always been an addition to any show, and I like them, and they should be on.
They just sort of threw me into it, and I sort of created it as I went along. You know, I thought, well, you're presenting a prize, right? You want to make the prize look good. So that was the whole focus.
If contestants got a chance to live out their fantasies, so did cast members. Barker enjoyed the good life with his wife of 27 years, Dorothy Jo.
They were high school sweethearts, and Dorothy Jo was always there to encourage Bob throughout his radio and television career.
Pennington, too, found true romance. In July 1973, Janice met 33-year-old Fritz Stomberger in Aspen, Colorado.
He was the top mountain climber in the world at that time, and also one of the 10 daredevil skiers. It was love at first sight, a very intense relationship that developed over a short period of time.
Janice and Fritz were married in May 1974. Shortly after, the show's onstage family expanded as well. 31-year-old Diane Parkinson joined The Price is Right cast in June 1975.
I started out as Miss World USA, and it segued into a lucrative modeling career in New York. I mean, I think I was like supermodel before supermodel was coined.
With Parkinson on board, the cast looked forward to another successful season. But Pennington was in for a shock. In September, Fritz left on a solo expedition to the Himalayas, on the border between Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the former Soviet Union.
He said, Janice, someday you may hear something about me, and I trust that you know me well enough to know that it wouldn't be true. And I said, what could I ever hear about you? And he said, maybe that I'm a Russian spy.
Coming up.
There was much more to this than met the eye.
And later, if looks could kill.
Man, that camera went off and the claws came out.
By 1975, The Price is Right was one of the most successful game shows on TV. But behind the closed doors of the happy set, a personal tragedy was about to unfold.
It was very serious to her. He had been a great love of her life.
That November, CBS executives raised the stakes. They expanded the daily half-hour show to an hour.
We then put in the giant wheels. But we did that twice, and that added a whole extra element to the show. And plus the fact that as we progress in the show, we keep adding new games on.
And it was an immediate hit. And several other shows tried it, but no other show has succeeded for the hour.
On camera, the cast was all smiles. But behind the scenes, 30-year-old Janice Pennington was in crisis. Pennington's husband, Fritz Stomberger, had not returned from his mountain climbing expedition in the Himalayas.
When I didn't hear from him after the 4th week, that's when we sent the first search party.
The rescue team retraced the route Fritz traveled, along the Afghanistan-Pakistan Soviet border.
They stopped at the last little hut on the mountain, and they asked if the people there had seen Fritz. They said no. But 2 days later, when they came back down the mountain, they stopped there again, and now very visibly in the corner of the hut was a nylon stuff bag with 5 of Fritz's books. Something had happened at that point, or someone wanted me to believe that something had happened.
Other search parties came back empty-handed, but Pennington was determined to find Fritz.
I loved him. I felt responsible because I was the only person that was searching. I felt strongly from the things that I had uncovered from the different investigations. There was much more to this than met the eye.
In 1976, Pennington hired Intertel, an investigation firm with high-powered connections to the intelligence community. The few clues Intertel turned up only deepened the mystery.
She really wanted to know what happened. They said, was he a spy? Was he kidnapped? I mean, no one knew.
On the set, Pennington continued to put up a happy front. But at night, she couldn't sleep. She had visions of Fritz being tortured.
I became very reclusive. I got heavily into metaphysics. I really isolated myself from friends, and anything in the outer world. I withdrew.
Pennington's unhappiness was obvious to her colleagues. Model Holly Hallstrom joined The Price is Right in 1977.
She just wanted to not break down in tears. It was a very tough time, very hard time for her.
In early 1980, 4 years after her husband's disappearance, Pennington tried to move on with her life. Janice began dating 27-year-old Carlos de Abreu, a businessman and film producer. But Janice still found it difficult to let go of Fritz.
I wanted to know, is this man that I loved dead, alive, or in prison? And I had to know, and I felt I had a right to know, and I felt someone knew.
The model wasn't the only cast member in crisis. In the summer of 1981, Bob Barker's wife of 36 years, Dorothy Jo, was diagnosed with lung cancer. Dorothy Jo passed away in October. Barker drew support from the cast and crew.
They were family. You used the strength of each other to get through either the loss of a family member or illness or a crisis in the world or a disaster.
Dorothy Jo had been passionate about animal rights. Barker found comfort in taking up her cause.
He started filling a great deal of his hours with this, with the animal activists, saving animals.
And that's when he started using the phrase, have your pet spayed or neutered. And to this day, that's how he closes out each of his shows.
Meanwhile, Pennington's relationship with Carlos de Abreu deepened. In September 1982, Carlos asked Janice to marry him. She accepted.
I thought, well, now I can move forward, and I had Fritz legally declared dead, which was a very difficult thing to do even after 7 years.
38-year-old Pennington and 31-year-old de Abreu were married on April 20th, 1984. But that was not the end of Fritz. Coming up.
The CIA said we can neither confirm nor deny based on national security.
By 1984, 2 members of The Price is Right cast suffered personal losses. Bob Barker's wife, Dorothy Jo, died of cancer, and Janice Pennington had her first husband, Fritz Stamberger, declared legally dead. But Janice's obsession with finding Fritz did not go away.
I would watch newscasts to see, would I see Fritz in a crowd?
In 1985, tragedy struck The Price is Right family once again. That October, the show's beloved announcer, Johnny Olson, died of complications from a stroke. Olson was 75.
It was sudden and quick, and happily for Johnny, I think he went the way he would have wanted to go, which was flying in to do a show.
The producers immediately launched a search for a new announcer. 48-year-old Rod Roddy landed the plum gig. Roddy was best known to audiences as the off-screen narrator on the ABC sitcom Soap.
Come on down!
With his flashy outfits and spirited delivery, Roddy fit right in with the show's festive atmosphere. Over the next 2 years, ratings continued to build. On March 27, 1987, The Price is Right celebrated a milestone. The program became the longest-running game show on daytime network television. Bob Barker's contribution to that success was critical. Former production assistant Linda Riegert.
He's a very handsome man. He's very suave. He's very, he can be very, very charming, and people like that.
Barker was also popular with the staff.
He had come to my home for dinner and vice versa, and we had shared a lot of good time and good conversation and fun together.
That same year, 63-year-old Barker was named executive producer. Mark Goodson's son, Jonathan Goodson.
He's got very good instincts about what works and what doesn't work, and we rely heavily on him.
On camera, Barker was his affable self, but behind the scenes, the host wasn't all smiles. Staff member Cheryl Paris became Barker's assistant upon his promotion.
From the time he became executive producer, I weighed everything I said very carefully. If you didn't, you would hear about it.
Paris wasn't the only one who felt she had to be careful. According to Hallstrom, producers told the models that they were easily replaceable.
I remember the first producer I worked for telling me that I was just movable furniture, movable prop. That's all we were. And if we didn't like it, they were going to miss us.
Trouble was also brewing within the models' own ranks. A fierce rivalry developed between Diane Parkinson and her colleagues. Hallstrom and Pennington were not on speaking terms with Parkinson.
We just had some serious disagreements that led to a total breakdown of communication. We all looked happy, yeah, but man, that camera went off and the claws came out. A lot of interpersonal conflicts on that set.
Audiences were oblivious to the backstage tension. All they knew was that they loved Bob Barker.
When Bob walks through the doors, the audience goes crazy, and it keeps that same energy level throughout the show.
Meanwhile, 42-year-old Pennington was still obsessed with finding out what happened to her missing first husband. Pennington had long suspected that Fritz Stomberger was involved in some secret intelligence mission. In October 1987, the model wrote the first of many letters to the United States government.
Some departments, like the CIA, said we can neither confirm nor deny based on national security. So to me, that was a red light. And I really felt strongly, and also because I had received documents from the State Department saying, well, a lot of it was blacked out, but saying that he was believed to have been involved in a covert operation along the border of Afghanistan for which he was imprisoned.
According to Pennington, some government officials didn't want her to know the truth. In 1988, a CIA agent visited Janice at her home and asked her to drop her search. That only made Pennington more determined. But the model was temporarily waylaid that June while taping The Price is Right. Webmaster Mark Green.
A cameraman had swung the camera around and it knocked her off stage. There's about a 5 or 6 foot gap between the stage and the floor where the audience sits.
Pennington was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Hospital. She suffered a concussion and a broken clavicle and had to undergo surgery. In February 1989, Pennington filed a lawsuit against CBS, citing negligence. Show-related injuries were not the only problem on the set. Backstage conflicts among the models intensified in 1990. Early that year, 45-year-old Parkinson and 66-year-old Barker began a sexual relationship. Parkinson later contended the sex was non-consensual. Barker said the relationship was voluntary. Sharon Freem was an editorial consultant on the show.
We all knew that something was going on. You could sort of tell by the body language and the little rumored things on the set.
Coming up.
There were Americans from both the hot and cold wars that had been transported to the Soviet Union.
And later, was the price too high for Holly?
I've never seen another human being so angry in my life. And I knew that my time on The Price is Right was over.
During the 18th season of The Price is Right, certain cast members became very cozy. In early 1990, 45-year-old Diane Parkinson and 66-year-old Bob Barker began a sexual relationship, but both paid a high price.
You fuss, you fight, you kiss and you make up. Sometimes you don't kiss and make up.
Co-workers soon noticed a difference in Parkinson and Barker.
There definitely was a change. You could feel it. Diane had the certain inside track.
I think everyone felt she wanted it to be obvious, because then people would sort of tiptoe around her and she could wield the mighty sword.
Despite the turmoil backstage, The Price is Right hit another milestone in April 1990. The program became the longest-running game show in American TV history, surpassing the primetime hit What's My Line? That same season, The Price is Right family added a new member, 39-year-old singer, dancer, and model, Kathleen Bradley.
I'd always admired Barker's Beauties and the show for many, many years, and I was so elated to join ranks with the Barker's Beauties as the first African-American model on that show.
Bradley fit right in. The new beauty even managed to bridge the rift among the models and became a close confidant of Diane Parkinson.
I think she was happy to know somebody there that she could befriend, because she and Janice and Holly had had some problems over the years.
Parkinson told Bradley that she had been approached by Playboy magazine to pose nude.
She confided in Barker and told him and asked him if she could do it. And at that time, Mark Goodson was alive, and I think Bob ran it past Mark.
That's how Mark said he figured out that Bob was having sex with Diane, because all of a sudden, he said, all of a sudden I got this phone call out of the blue from Bob saying, you know, Mark, I think it'd be a good idea for Diane to pose nude for Playboy.
Of course, the show's persona was that of nothing too décolleté. Mr. Goodson never wanted anything too risque.
Barker later said that he did not discuss the Playboy assignment with Parkinson. But on December 15, 1990, Goodson wrote a letter to Pennington, Hallstrom, and Bradley. Goodson informed the women that Barker phoned him about Playboy's offer to Parkinson. According to Goodson's letter, Barker said there was quite a fat fee involved, and he didn't want to be arbitrary in handling the request.
We all got this letter saying that Diane wanted to pose nude, but that CBS and Mark Goodson, who owned the show, felt that this was just not in keeping with the wholesome image of a family show.
Although Barker disputes any involvement in Parkinson's Playboy assignment, Hallstrom believes otherwise.
CBS and Mark Goodson told her that she could not pose nude for Playboy. And she really wanted to, and so she kind of circumvented them and went after Bob. And about 3 months later, Diane was posing nude.
Parkinson posed for Playboy's cameras in mid-1991, but before the photos were published, the relationship between Diane and Bob fell apart.
I think he just ended it, didn't call her anymore, didn't pursue her anymore, and just let her know that, you know, they couldn't see each other anymore.
Parkinson did not hide her anger.
It was daggers being shot across the stage and doors slamming and some pretty strong language was being flung around that stage.
On camera, it was business as usual. On July 22nd, The Price is Right taped its 20th anniversary show.
Every time we tape a show, we break our own record. And even more incredible than the fact that we have been on all these years is the fact that we're still #1.
Parkinson's nude photos appeared in the December 1991 issue of Playboy.
I think after doing 18 years of Price is Right and wearing bikinis and swimsuits and lingerie and very sexy things, it was such a tease that I think doing Playboy actually settled the savage beast out there.
It was done in fairly good taste. It still wasn't us. It made everybody a little bit on edge because this wasn't what we were about.
Meanwhile, Janice Pennington's lawsuit against CBS went to trial. On March 20th, 1992, a jury awarded Pennington $1.3 million for injuries she sustained on the set of The Price is Right. Pennington's legal victory wasn't the only piece of good news in the model's life. By 1992, the Soviet Union had fallen. The end of the Cold War opened a new avenue in Janice's search for her first husband, Fritz.
And when President Yeltsin said that we believed there were Americans from both the hot and cold wars that had been transported to the Soviet Union, I thought maybe if Fritz had been imprisoned in Afghanistan, he could have been one of those to be transported to Russia. So that's when Carlos and I decided to go to Russia.
In October 1992, Pennington and her second husband, Carlos de Abreu, traveled to Moscow, determined to finish their quest.
She ended up meeting with high Kremlin officials trying to get information.
Russian military files disclosed the truth about Fritz Stamberger. The mountaineer was recruited by the CIA in 1974 and helped organize the agency's bases in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Fritz died in the 1980s, fighting alongside Afghan rebels against the Soviets.
It helped me to put the final seal on that chapter of my life.
Coming up.
I never discussed this nude layout with her in any way before she did it.
By mid-1991, the fling between Price's Right host Bob Barker and Barker's beauty Diane Parkinson was over. But the fireworks were just beginning.
We're going to prove that these charges are false, and I'm going to sue her for malicious prosecution.
In May 1993, Parkinson made her second appearance in Playboy. The new photos were more graphic.
I know the first one was received well. Barker was okay with it. So I thought. The second issue, he wasn't happy about that one. And he would tell me that in the dressing room. He did not like that issue.
Parkinson sat for press interviews to promote her Playboy layout.
Diane gave an interview to USA Today, and they asked her in the interview, well, what does Bob think about you posing nude in Playboy?
Parkinson told USA Today that Barker said the good will definitely outweigh the bad, but Bob had a different point of view.
He called Diane into his dressing room, and they had a huge screaming fight. He was denying that he ever had anything to do with her posing nude for Playboy, and she was saying, but Bob, you're the one who said, oh yes, I think you should do it, and you're the one who called Mark and said, let her do it. And Bob was saying, oh no, 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 you're crazy, you're lying.
Parkinson decided to quit. After 18 years on The Price is Right, Diane taped her last episode on June 7th, 1993.
I feel like I got a divorce after 18 years from a show that I loved, and they got custody of the audience.
The producers of The Price is Right launched a nationwide search to replace Parkinson.
We're auditioning young ladies all over the country to become our new Barker's Beauty. I'm happy with my beauties, and my beauties are happy with me, and we're going to keep it that way.
A 22-year-old college student named Gina Lee Nolan won the coveted job in early 1994.
My first day, Barker came up to my dressing room. He said, welcome aboard. Sorry that everything is going on, but you're the girl for the part, so enjoy it. And I remember him saying that to me, and I thought, my gosh, I mean, he's a class act.
Then, in May 1994, Parkinson dropped a bombshell. 1 year after leaving The Price is Right, Diane filed a lawsuit accusing Bob Barker of sexual harassment and wrongful termination. In her complaint, Parkinson alleged that Barker made unwanted sexual demands for several years.
Good morning.
Barker and his lawyer, Jeffrey Berman, held a press conference on June 8th.
Bob's relationship with Diane Parkinson was voluntary and mutually consensual. There was absolutely no coercion or sexual harassment in any form.
As God is my witness, I have never forced her to do one thing that she did not want to do, ever, sexually or any other way.
The game show host characterized his relationship with Parkinson as cordial, with the exception of one bitter fight in May 1993.
When she was prepared to do the nude layout in Playboy, she didn't even discuss it with me. She did not come to me. She went directly to Mark Goodson, who was living at that time. He gave her permission. She shot the pictures, as I understand, during one of our periods of hiatus, and yet she went out and said that I supported her in this. I did not want her to do that. So I asked her to come into my dressing room. I asked her to leave the door open, and I said, Diane, I understand that you are saying that I supported your nude layout in Playboy. I said, I wish you would not do that. I said, as you well know, we have never discussed your nude layout in Playboy. She said, well, what did you think of it? I said, I think it is unfortunate. And she went ballistic.
Parkinson's case never went before a jury. In April 1995, Diane suddenly dropped her lawsuit. The model said her doctor ordered her to do so because the stress was ruining her health.
The fact that she's dismissed the lawsuit is total vindication for me.
But the legal wars were just heating up. Coming up.
He called me a liar, said I was slandering and libeling his good name and character, and sued me.
In May 1994, the wholesome image of The Price is Right was tarnished when Barker beauty Diane Parkinson accused Bob Barker of sexual harassment. Parkinson dropped the suit a year later, but there were more legal battles to come.
Bob launched this whole media attack on me, demanding his day in court.
While Barker was busy defending his integrity, the show continued on. In the spring of 1995, one of Barker's beauties landed a primetime prize. 23-year-old Gina Lee Nolan was spotted on The Price is Right by a casting director from the hit show Baywatch.
I was just floored when I got the call. I'd never seen a script. I'd never, even thought of acting.
Nolan accepted a regular role on Baywatch. 29-year-old Cindy Margolis filled in for Nolan while the producers searched for a permanent replacement. Margolis credits the game show with launching her career as the web's most downloaded woman.
And it really helped open up my college market because I don't know if people know that out there, but college kids love Price is Right. That's a huge market.
Nolan was permanently replaced by 27-year-old model Chantel Dubé. After Chantel was hired, friends and colleagues had one question.
I think it was the first thing when people knew that I was on the show. It was like, has Barker ever made any, sexual contact? Absolutely not. Nothing. Absolutely not. He was very respectful.
In the spring of 1995, Holly Hallstrom's weight became an issue. At 43, Hallstrom was prescribed hormone medication for menopause.
Bob had come to me on several occasions and said, lose weight. And I explained, I'm on this medication and it causes weight gain as a side effect, but if I stay on it, then it's supposed to balance out.
Production assistant Linda Riegert worked next to Hallstrom's dressing room. In August 2000, Riegert testified under oath that she overheard one of these conversations.
He said that he wanted her to lose the weight. And she said, do you want me to go off the medication? And he said, no, he didn't want her to do that. And she said, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I go off the medication. I can lose it fast if I do that. And he said, you just do what it takes.
So I went off the medication because I didn't want to lose my job. And I'd lost about half of the weight, about 7 pounds.
In mid-July, just weeks before summer hiatus, Barker met with Hallstrom once more in her dressing room. As Riegert explained in the legal proceedings, she overheard the conversation.
She said that she had lost a lot of the weight, and he said he didn't care, he wanted her to take early retirement.
I was like, what? What are you talking about? I've lost almost all the weight, and we're getting ready to go on hiatus.
He said, you've had a problem with weight off and on. In the past, it's going to be there in the future. I just want you to take early retirement.
Barker denies ever ordering Hallstrom to take early retirement. After 19 years on The Price is Right, Hallstrom shot her final episode at the end of July.
Within a month or two after I was off the show, I read this horrible article about myself in the tabloids that said that I had stormed off the show and after a scream fest with Bob, and that I had called up and just quit.
In September, Hallstrom issued a statement giving her version of the story.
The next thing I know, he launches a huge media attack on me. He went all over national television calling me a liar, claiming that I had voluntarily retired and that weight was never mentioned.
Then, on December 7th, Barker filed a lawsuit charging Hallstrom with libel and slander.
So I countersued for wrongful termination.
In her July 1996 countersuit, Hallstrom alleged she was unlawfully fired for gaining weight.
At that point, he turned around and he started fighting.
Meanwhile, Hallstrom could not find a job.
In Hollywood, they just know that I sued a producer, and I never worked again. So I sold my house and then literally lived out of my car.
Hallstrom moved to Utah in 1997 and found seasonal work at ski resorts. Behind the scenes, Barker's lawsuit and Hallstrom's countersuit continued. Meanwhile, The Price is Right endured. Barker's beauty, Chantel Dubé, left the show in 1999. She was replaced by 28-year-old model Nikki Schuyler Ziering, a former Playboy centerfold.
It's just exciting to be a part of something like that that, you know, you watched for years growing up.
Finally, 4 years after filing her countersuit, the Hallstrom matter moved forward. On May 26, 2000, Hallstrom's lawyers took Bob Barker's deposition.
I do.
Barker described his first conversation with Hallstrom about the weight issue.
I came into her dressing room and asked her, let's talk about the possibility of you losing a few pounds. But I didn't say, you need to lose weight.
According to Barker, a production company executive wanted to downsize from 4 models to 3 to cut costs.
We had to have 2 models who could do swimsuits. We had Kathleen Bradley and Gina Lee Nolan. They did swimsuits. Janice Pennington and Holly Hallstrom. They did not do swimsuits. Janice is a delightful woman with whom everyone enjoys working. Holly is difficult, and everyone did not enjoy working with Holly, so she was the obvious choice.
Barker said it was the executive's idea to offer Hallstrom early retirement.
He said, I think that the way to handle this is to offer Holly a nice retirement package. Now, I should say that this company has not fired people over the years.
All that was about to change. Coming up.
We probably didn't play the game the way that we were supposed to.
In 1995, Holly Hallstrom claimed Bob Barker fired her from The Price is Right because she was overweight. Barker was furious and sued Hallstrom for libel and slander. Hallstrom shot back by filing a lawsuit for wrongful termination. By 2000, the cases were still unresolved, and more courtroom combat was just around the corner.
I told the truth and I got punished for it.
In July 2000, Hallstrom's lawyers deposed longtime Barker's beauty Janice Pennington. Barker's assistant, Cheryl Paris, was also deposed in July. Model Kathleen Bradley and production assistant Linda Riegert were deposed in August.
I told the truth. I knew that without question I would lose my job. And I thought, you know, this man is trying to hurt so many people. And he's relentless.
That August, a judge ruled that Hallstrom failed to prove she was fired due to her weight gain. A few months later, Hallstrom's breach of contract claims were dismissed by an arbitrator. Meanwhile, Barker's lawsuit against Hallstrom was scheduled to go to trial in September 2000.
But 3 days before the trial started, he dismissed his case, took the loss.
The court ordered Barker to pay Hallstrom's legal fees of $26,000, but that didn't satisfy the ex-model.
I sued him for malicious prosecution.
Barker fought the allegations, and an appeals court later dismissed Hallstrom's malicious prosecution claim. In the meantime, Mark Goodson Productions, which produced The Price is Right, was sold to Pearson Television in 1999. In September 2000, a Pearson executive met with the employees of The Price is Right.
He said, you're now part of our family, and we want you all to feel very comfortable. We are very pleased to have acquired the show, and we love the way it is. We're going to keep everything the same.
On October 19th, Pearson executives called another meeting. This time, employees were summoned into a room individually. There, they met with a male producer and a woman from Human Resources.
I think she shook my hand, sit down. Without any further ado, she said, your services are no longer needed. Period. Period. Not another word.
In her meeting, Sharon Freem was given the same speech.
I was shocked, and I said, is there anything that I did that was wrong, or because I didn't know what to say. I said, did I do? And he couldn't really look at me.
I would say without a doubt probably one of the most brutal moments in my life, and I've been in this industry my entire life.
Paris and Freem were not the only ones who lost their jobs that day. Linda Riegert, Janice Pennington, and Kathleen Bradley were also dismissed.
I think it was a little abrupt. I wasn't quite really ready or prepared to leave.
Pearson executives offered Pennington and Bradley work on a future special about models. Both declined in favor of financial packages. Riegert contends that some of the firings may have been retaliatory. Pennington, Bradley, Paris, and Riegert all testified in the Barker-Hallstrom lawsuits.
We all gave depositions, and they were all contrary in one way or another, or contradicted something that I guess Barker had said or wanted us to say.
On December 12, 2000, Bob Barker celebrated his 77th birthday. That day, the Los Angeles Times quoted Barker as saying that the layoffs were not retaliatory. Furthermore, Barker said he had nothing to do with the decision. Pearson representatives later said the motivation was economic. Other employees were laid off in 2001. In January 2001, Linda Riegert filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against Barker and The Price is Right.
Somebody, I guess, has to stand up and say, enough is enough. You're not going to do this to me.
Barker denied the charges, but the legal troubles didn't stop Barker or the program from moving forward. In June, The Price is Right taped its 30th anniversary show.
The only thing on The Price is Right that has changed is the color of my hair. We have the same set, we have everything that looks the same, and our viewers do not want us to change it.
Pennington and Bradley were replaced by two new Barker's Beauties.
We have selected as permanent Barker's Beauties the lovely Claudia Jordan here and the lovely Heather Kozar here.
3 months later, Barker and The Price is Right were hit with two more lawsuits. Cheryl Paris and Sharon Freem sued for wrongful termination. Freem additionally charged Barker with sexual harassment.
I feel that I was the brunt of a lot of sexual jokes.
Barker is contesting the charges. A decision is pending. Because of the ongoing litigation, Bob Barker declined to be interviewed for this E! True Hollywood story. Despite the backstage scandals, fans are loyal to The Price is Right. After 40,000 contestants and more than $200 million in prizes, the show is still a ratings juggernaut. And 78-year-old Barker remains as popular as ever. In the fickle world of network television, The Price is Right is something of a miracle.
Everybody's there to have a good time and hopefully win a lot of money and cars, so they get really emotional, and it's kind of a good feeling.
Show us the hand flip.
You know, it's all this, and it's very slow, and it's very gentle.
This is when we get our close-up.
Back then, we would definitely have to have a manicure. I didn't quite have